Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. From the Jethro's Barbecue Studio, I'm Justin Grady. We hear all the time about how prairie land and prairie is diminishing, soil health is eroding. But what are you going to do about it? What's anybody doing about it? Well, one group is getting very hands-on to actually save our prairie land, believe it or not. Like really hands-on. Actually, you might be able to help. So that's what the topic is today. Lance Brisbois joins us, the Deputy Director of Golden Hills Resource Conservation and Development. That's exactly what you're working on. Thank you for coming on the Iowa Podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, important note, everybody, if you like barbecue, because duh, and it's Iowa, did you know there are more pork? There's more pigs than people here. So do your part and eat them. Go to iowapodcast.com and with every $100 gift card you buy from Jethro's Barbecue, you get a $30 one. They're just going to give you a $30 one. That's more barbecue, and that's more of you doing your part by eating pigs. So delicious. Lance, thanks so much for coming in here. Like I said, this is kind of a cool project. We've featured a lot of individuals that are concerned about the prairie land or looking at ways to protect or conserve certain areas, but your group is actually doing the work. And this is really fascinating. You have an event. The last one is coming up here Monday, so this will be airing Saturday, so here in a few days. What is the Prairie Seed Harvest? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so I'm with Golden Hills, and we're a small nonprofit based in southwest Iowa. And with our Prairie Seed Harvest project, we go out to mostly remnant prairies, which are prairies that have never been plowed before. And we get volunteers to hand collect seed. And then that seed is used for restoration projects in the Lus Hills area.
Remnant prairie. This is a term I've never heard of. What is remnant prairie?
So it's a prairie that was never plowed, unlike in Iowa. At one point, about 85% of the land roughly was covered in tallgrass prairie. Uh-huh. And now 99.9% of that prairie is gone. So what's left, those areas, those little slivers that have never been plowed before, are what we call remnants.
Got it. So the ones that haven't been touched and are, for lack of a better term, original, right? Is that
yeah?
Okay.
Virgin prairie is another term for it too.
Oh, sure. That translates. These are the ones you're targeting.
Yep.
So you're almost starting at these things and then expanding them outward, so to say.
Yeah. So the Lus Hills landform, which I can go more in detail on that, but it's a very steep bluffs along the Missouri River, and because they were so steep, they were never farmed. A lot of times there was grazing cattle, but they weren't cropped, and so that's why the prairies created some of the most fertile soils on earth. That's why all of Iowa is cropland now, because they plowed the prairies to plant crops, and now the Lus Hills are where a lot of those tiny remnants of prairie are left.
So you guys are collecting seeds.
Yep.
By hand.
Yes. Yep.
No, there are no fancy machines involved.
We don't use, there is definitely like on a larger scale, you can use machines, but again, the bluffs are really steep, and so a lot of machinery wouldn't make it out there anyway.
Oh, good point.
So it's pretty small scale, obviously, when you're doing it by hand, but that allows us to target certain species also. A prairie is just another word for a grassland, and so dominated by grasses, but there are also a lot of forbs, and we kind of do two different things. Sometimes we'll have people get a little of everything, whatever we can find, and just mix them all together. That's for more of the larger scale restoration projects. And then we also do individual species, so we'll target, like just the other night, we were picking a bunch of rose hips, which is wild rose, the state flower. So picking those seeds and then keep those separate, and we grow some in a greenhouse over the winter and then do a native plant sale in the spring.
So you have a lot of volunteers doing this. And the first thing I think of is you're talking about this, and I'm like, I don't know what any of that means at all. Like how are people just straight up walking up the Lus Hills? We'll get into why the Lus Hills here in a bit, but are they just straight up walking through these areas and they're just literally picking prairie plants at random? Like how does this even work? I'm assuming there's some training on how to pick things
there's
and
a
what to
little
look
bit
for.
of training. So we'll teach people once we get out to the prairie, I'll identify certain species that we're looking at. If there are any invasives or species that we don't want to pick, we'll point those out too. A lot of it is pretty soft and fluffy, so you can just pick it by hand. Don't have to worry about, getting slivers or anything. There are a few species that kind of have pokey parts. So then for those ones, we can wear gloves or use shears to trim those off. But yeah, I'll help people identify the species that we're looking for and then just pick it off and put it in a bag or a bucket.
So you just like a bag over your shoulder and a bucket. You just walk through and pick stuff that you see.
Yep. Yeah. And we do a lot so Golden Hills doesn't own or manage our own prairies, but we will partner with the county conservation boards and with the Iowa DNR and sometimes with private landowners too. So we will go out to those sites, and a lot of times we're close to a trail, so it's not necessarily a super steep, rugged adventure to get out there.
What's the scale of this? Because this sounds big. So do you have like thousands of people doing this, or is it a group of is it like you show up and like one other guy's there and you're like, hey dude?
It varies. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I just have a couple people.
Really?
I would say probably on average like 10 to 15 is pretty typical that shows up.
That's actually pretty good.
And we do a lot of events. Fall is the peak time. There are species that are ready a lot sooner in the summer, but September, October is the peak. And so I schedule a lot of events during that time and then just see who shows up.
Yeah. And then, so do people, I'm assuming if they're like have a bag and a bucket, they're just identifying stuff that looks right, and just chucking it all in there together. And you have some process later that sorts out the plant matter from the seeds?
So typically if we're doing a larger scale, like if we're going to give it to a county conservation board to do a restoration, we don't bother cleaning it because they'll just put it out onto the land, and you don't necessarily need to have it cleaned. For the individual plants that we're growing, in that case, we do more cleaning and keep the species separate, and then we'll process it as needed.
And you're kind of hinting at the various uses for these, which we're also going to get into. But can you give everyone a general idea? You have an Excel sheet, like a public Excel sheet on your website of how many species you're looking for. And so I naturally click this expecting to see 5 or 10, and it just keeps scrolling.
Yeah.
So how many? Is this was this like a couple hundred?
So, Remnant Prairie can have up to a few hundred species of plants.
Crap.
I would say probably typically get a couple dozen. Again, partly because most of the work that we do is in the fall. But there's some species that are just really easy to get. Like you go out and just grab handfuls at a time, and you can get a larger quantity. And then there are other species that are harder to find. A lot of times they're shorter, they're kind of buried in the grass, so you really got to look for them. So then we tend to get smaller quantities of those types of species. But yeah, I would say a couple dozen typically is what we get of species.
Who does this? Like, I naturally would assume the people volunteering for this have a major passion for conservation, for prairie land. I would assume this is the crowd. But are there like interns involved? Are there like students at universities involved? Who is the general crowd that shows up and is usually helping you?
Yeah, I would say it's just people who are interested in conservation and prairies and native plants. We have had some students come out before, but we publicize it as broadly as we can on social media and do press releases and stuff. So
on podcasts.
Yep.
Crazy
so whoever is interested can show up. And the only caveat I would say is like it can be rough terrain at times. So if you're mobility challenged, that might be an issue. But like I said, you don't need to have experience because we'll teach you when you get out there.
Is it very I don't know how to ask this question, but like saving prairie land by picking things one by one with humans, people doing this. Is that challenging, or are people pretty much in Iowa show up and help?
Yeah, we typically have a decent number of volunteers, and people really enjoy it. Especially, I think this time of year is really beautiful to be outside on the prairie, and we do them typically on weeknights, and so the sun setting and the golden hour on the prairie is really beautiful.
That
and,
is actually kind of cool.
yeah, and it's just therapeutic for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it does, because people need more outside time, connecting to nature. And, we used to think like, oh, it's just kind of helpful for you. We don't really know why. Of course, now we have a lot of science that shares why getting out in nature and connecting actually helps our mental health, helps our physical health. So you were hinting at this earlier. And again, we're going to talk about the Lus Hills, but what happens to the seed? Because you kind of gave a hint. You said, well, sometimes we clean it if we're going to grow plants.
Yeah.
But if we hand it off to the DNR, we just chuck a bunch of plants at them. Like, where does this stuff go? What do you do with it?
Like I mentioned, county conservation boards and DNR are primary partners. We've also worked with the Nature Conservancy and Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation, and some private landowners too. But yeah, so if we mix all the seed, kind of depends where we are. DNR specifically has rules that they don't want seed taken off site. So any of the seed that we harvest on a state property stays with the DNR.
Oh, weird.
So they will use that, like as an example, Lus Hills State Forest is where we're picking next week, and that seed will give to the DNR, and then they'll use on projects that they already have in mind to do restoration on.
So you can't take DNR property. I don't know if this is the right thing to say. You can't take DNR seeds and DNR property,
correct,
and bring those somewhere else.
Correct.
Can you take it from one DNR property to another DNR controlled property?
My understanding is if you, like the DNR staff themselves can do that, but like I couldn't.
Got it.
And county conservation boards are a lot more flexible, so a lot of times we'll get permission to take seed off site and then grow it. And
why is that? Is there a reason for that?
I assume the concern is that it could become an issue with especially rare or endangered species. If everyone could just go and take seed, then it could put species at risk.
It's the collection. That's what they're concerned about. They're not necessarily concerned about you planting at places. They're concerned about people coming in and tearing up stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So you mentioned that sometimes you give it back to the DNR. Sometimes you clean them and then grow seeds. Do you like sell plants to people?
Yeah, we typically do a native plant sale in the spring.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
And so what's the extent of this? So conservation agencies, or do you sell like seed packs too to places?
We haven't. We do usually keep a mix, and so at certain events and stuff, we'll have like little seed packets to give away.
Okay, so you have like your own greenhouse, or are you partnering with other greenhouses?
We'll be getting a greenhouse or a high tunnel soon, but in the past we've been working with the local community college because they have a greenhouse.
Oh, okay. And what's the local community college? Give them a shout out.
Iowa Western in Council Bluffs.
Got it. Okay, so a shout out to Iowa Western. Thanks for all the work you're doing. Really appreciate it. Why I guess last question on this, maybe it's a little too nerdy, so I promise I'll move on, everybody. But like, do you keep a bank or an index, or are you, because you mentioned some of these are nearing extinction or at risk of extinction. So do you keep some seed bank where they're protected?
I have started to do that. Yeah.
You have? Wow.
So again, it's pretty small scale, just maybe 100 seeds of certain species.
That sounds big to me.
Yeah. But I should have mentioned too, like when we do keep stuff separate, the labeling is super important.
Oh, sure.
I usually put the species, and then the location of where it was harvested and when it was harvested. And so then I have a spreadsheet and I try to track it all and make sure that everything, keep my records straight.
So most people hearing this are like, okay, conservation, saving prairie land, great. But then you keep saying Lus Hills over and over again.
Yeah.
And so everyone's kind of picking up on a clue. Like, clearly the Lus Hills are significant here. You've dropped a few clues onto why that is. But what's so special about the Lus Hills in this, in saving prairie land?
Yeah. So in Iowa, I mentioned 99% of the prairies are gone. But of the remaining 0.1%, most of that is in the Lus Hills. As I said, because it's so the land was too steep to farm. So these little remnants are, and including the largest remnants left in Iowa, are in the Lus Hills. And they're also unique because there's nothing of the size or scale of the Lus Hills anywhere else in the world except in China. So we have Iowa and China. Lus soil is actually pretty common. It's just the depth and the size of the hills here.
So you get outside of Iowa, anywhere in the United States, and you don't really find these type of species in this prairie land, except if you want to go to China. Is that right?
Well, the species are, it's interesting. We do have some species in the Lus Hills that are more short grass that are typically found farther west, but then we also have some of the traditional tallgrass prairie species that are found throughout Iowa. So it's kind of because of the steep slopes, there are species that prefer drier, almost more desert-like climates that grow in the Lus Hills that don't grow elsewhere in Iowa.
Why Iowa, though? Okay, I get the Lus Hills within Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
but in case anyone doesn't know, there are other hills in mountain ranges across this country. So why is Iowa so significant? It's just kind of the luck of the draw.
Yeah,
Everything goes back to glaciers at some point. Is like tectonic plates? Who knows? Does all that factor in? Like, why Iowa? Why is Iowa so important?
The glaciers.
It's always the frickin' glaciers.
Pulverized all the soil.
Glaciers. Let's be honest. No one has a clue what's going on. They just blame the glaciers for everything.
It's true. So they had all this silt. It's like a flour is what the soil texture feels like. People call it sugar clay also. But all this pulverized material. And then as the glaciers retreated, there was a really giant, wide Missouri River. And then in the winters, the ice would refreeze and then it would melt in the summer. So it'd bring down all this silt with the spring flooding. And then the prevailing westerly winds created these basically dunes. So it follows where the Missouri River runs north-south. So for the most part, the Missouri River runs northwest to southeast. But between Iowa and Nebraska, it runs almost north-south.
Maybe before all the continents split apart or something, like Iowa and China were like neighbors, which is why they share seeds. Don't give me that look. Come on, no one knows anyway.
I don't know. Well, it had
Just kidding.
it's something to do with the. I want to say it's Sioux quartzite. I'm not sure. There's a specific type of rock that was pulverized to create the soil.
If anybody's not watching on video, you just need to see his reaction when I was like, maybe Iowa and China were neighbors. The reaction was priceless. You're like, dude, you're a psychopath. That is not even close.
Well, they're not. That is an interesting point, though. They're not actually old. The Lus Hills are pretty new, relatively speaking. Yeah.
How
in the
new
last,
are they?
Like 20 to 12,000 years.
20 to 12,000 years.
Yeah.
They're a spring chicken.
And so, yeah, Pangea was hundreds of millions.
I appreciate you bearing with me. Sometimes on this show we get a little nutty. So I guess the big question is this more of a historic preservation endeavor, or is like obviously the DNR and conservation boards and are interested. So what's the primary interest driving this? Is saving the prairie land a historic thing, or is it a practical thing, or maybe is it a little bit of both?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. And as I mentioned, just because there's so few prairies left, it's important that we try to restore more of them. We've had a lot of, you mentioned soil erosion. Prairies are really good at keeping the soil in place and reducing erosion. Also, lots of water quality benefits. You've probably heard about water quality.
I've heard about
in
this
Iowa.
thing. Yeah.
So, also just wildlife habitat too. And then just honestly, this scenic and aesthetic value of having prairies is something important.
The more I research, it's in the news right now, and I don't really care what your political affiliation is, looking at the audience. But the more I've learned about like food and water quality, the more I've realized that as we try to speed up things and make nature more efficient and bend it to our will, even controlling river systems and as we try to do that, it actually kind of backfires in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a point where humans are supposed to take care of the land, but then there's a point where humans aren't supposed to. We go too far sometimes.
Yeah.
And so if there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes taking things too far actually ruins stuff quite a bit, right? And so we should take care of, but not try to force things. I don't know if there's probably a better way to say that, but it's interesting that like what you said really stuck out, which is as we restore some of these native grasslands and prairie lands, we notice that like the water quality gets better. I've heard people say the air gets better. Our livestock get better. Like things start to improve when we take care of the thing that God gave us. You know what I mean? That's kind of one of the patterns that I've been noticing. I don't know if that's a fair summary.
Yeah, I would say so. And just you've probably also heard about like the pollinator declines, and so prairies are really good for that. And then all of the other species in some way or another rely on the plants and the insects. So just helping, every species by planting prairie.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I'm glad people like you are leading this effort. And of course, community colleges are partnering. Do you need more community colleges partnering? Do you need more partners? I'm assuming you need more volunteers, but we'll get to that. But do you need more partners in this?
It kind of depends. Like I do think eventually it would be cool to scale up and have more people who are growing native species. There are a few native seed farms in Iowa. One thing I didn't really get into was what we call local ecotype. So the different landforms and the climate zones of Iowa. It's always good to try to find seed from as local as possible source, just because it's adapted to that very specific site. And so in western Iowa, say in southwest Iowa, buying seed from northeast Iowa may not be the best option if you can find something closer. Yeah.
It's that sensitive? Like just northeast part of the state, southwest part of the state? Because generally you would think that like garden plants that you get are probably going to have a very, very similar performance if it's northeast Iowa or southwest Iowa. But you're saying seeds are way different.
Well, it just is.
Or prairie land or whatever.
They're more adapted to a very specific climate over thousands of years. And so different temperatures, different amounts of daylight, different amounts of precipitation. So
does this mean the species vary then from northeastern Iowa to southwestern Iowa?
Yep, there is some difference. There's a lot of species that are the same, but there are some differences too.
That's crazy. So if you would pick, I don't know, if you harvest something from northeast Iowa and plant it in southwest Iowa, it might not do so well and vice versa.
Yep.
That's crazy. I had no idea. Wow, they're very temperamental.
Yeah.
It's like they kind of like they don't like their neighbors very much.
But they are for the most part, a lot of native species are very hardy too. So once you get them established, that can be the challenges. But once they're established, they can withstand a lot.
Well, anybody who wants to like walk up some hills, enjoy golden hour, hang out with people, pick seeds, just walk through nature and absorb that and help restore prairie land at the same time. If anyone's hearing that message and that excites them, how do they reach out to you and how do they get involved? I know your last thing for the season is Monday. That'll be what is that? October 20th, right? Yeah. So if people are like, sign me up, I want to get out there and do this final push and get out in some nature. How do they do this? What's the website? How do they reach out?
Yep. So our website is goldenhillsrcd.org and then /Prairie Seed is this specific webpage. We also post on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, and then we have a general Golden Hills newsletter, and then we also have a specific Prairie Seed sign up.
And is all of that on the website?
Yep.
And what's that website one more time?
goldenhillsrcd.org.
All right. And for anybody driving, please don't, try to write that down in your phone. That's dumb. Don't do that. We will post all of that on iowapodcast.com with links and the whole bit. Lance, thank you so much for coming on the show to tell us about this. Lance Brisbois, the Deputy Director of Golden Hills Resource Conservation and Development. Of course, everybody go sign up if you want to help out. The last day for this season is Monday, October 20th. Lance, thanks for coming on the Iowa Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, Justin here. Death is not the easiest topic to discuss. It's a hard one. It's pretty heavy. But I want you to think about this. What were to happen if you died right now? You died on the job. A lot of you listen while you're working, while you're commuting, while you're working, while you're driving for your job. What would happen right now if you died? Or if you got severely injured on the job? What would you do? What would your family do? If you don't have an answer, that's a problem because you're leaving them to pick up the pieces. I had Nate Bolton in here. He's an Iowa workers' rights attorney to talk about this very topic. Like, what do you actually do? How should you prepare in advance? He spent 20 minutes with me just giving you resources to tell you what to do, what to plan for, how to act, who to call. And so his number one chunk of advice is just have a plan ahead of time. Deal with the reality. It'll probably never happen, but just have a plan. The whole show's free. It doesn't cost you anything. iowapodcast.com/Nate. iowapodcast.com/Nate. Listen to that interview. It's so much good information. And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.